Warning! This episode of Data Dissonance contains political commentary, strong opinions, strong language, and a healthy dose of common sense, the kind that tends to drive unserious people into full emotional meltdown. If you're allergic to facts, offended by jokes, or if you think Jake Tapper is still a journalist, this may not be for you. Listener discretion is advised. Though honestly, if you're here, you already know what you signed up for.
It's amazing how fast a narrative can collapse when reality decides to photobomb the script. Over the weekend, a major pipe bomb story hit the national news, and within minutes, CNN's Jake Tapper confidently told America the suspect was a white male. Except there was one problem. The man is very clearly black. Not ambiguously black. Not, we need better lighting black. Just black. And suddenly the country was reminded of something that's been bubbling under the surface for years. A shocking pattern where non-white suspects, Hispanic, Black, Middle Eastern, even certain Asian nationalities, keep getting logged as white in police databases, federal stats, and media reports. It's almost like someone benefits from padding one demographic and scrubbing another. Almost. So tonight, we're ripping the lid off that system-wide glitch. Or maybe glitch isn't the right word. All right, folks, welcome back to Data Dissonance, the show that keeps breaking down narratives like they're IKEA furniture built by someone who lost the instructions. And tonight, we've got the whole crew with us, all ready to jump face first into the mess CNN made this weekend. But before they speak, let's bring them in with the traditional roast session, because equal opportunity embarrassment is what America was built on. Brian is here. The man who saw Tapper call a black guy white and immediately said, "Yep, that's CNN math. 2 lies divided by 0 equals journalism." Brian hasn't been this fired up since the last time a Democrat forgot their inside voice on a hot mic. Rachel is with us, the only one on this panel who can take a mainstream media disaster, strip it down to the bones, and explain the institutional failure without punching her laptop like Brian does. When Rachel says something's wrong, it usually means 20 lawsuits and a Pulitzer attempt are about to hit the newsroom. Daniel is back, our resident conspiracy theorist, though at this point the world keeps making him look like a historian. He saw this race mislabeling years ago, documented it, mapped it, color-coded it like a psychopath, and tonight he's basically walking into the studio whispering, "I told you," like a horror movie narrator. And Skylar is here. Our Green Party progressive who showed up today looking like she's preparing her soul for battle. She's the only person willing to defend the system even when the system accidentally turns every suspect into a white Republican. Pray for her. She's gonna need it. All right, panelists are here, roasts complete, and no one has walked out. Let's get into it. All right, let's crack this open. We've got a pipe bomb suspect, a national security level story, FBI involvement, and CNN treating basic observation like it's advanced quantum physics. Jake Tapper looks into the camera, tells America the suspect is a white male, and then the mugshot or footage hits the internet and... yeah, that's not a white dude. That is clearly a black man, not racially ambiguous, not hard to determine, just black. And the minute that disconnect shows up, normal people start asking, how do you screw that up? But those of us who've been watching the game know better. You don't keep landing on the same mistake over and over by accident. You get there because the incentives are aligned to keep white-looking suspects at the center of every scary story. And if reality doesn't cooperate, someone nudges the label. Let's get the panel in here because this isn't just about Tapper messing up. This is about years of crime stats and racial classifications getting quietly cooked. Brian, I'm just gonna light the fuse and hand you the match. Have at it.
You know that feeling when you catch a kid with chocolate all over his face and he swears he didn't touch the cake? That's CNN right now. Tapper sits there, dead serious, and calls this guy white like we can't see the same picture he's seeing. This is not a typo. This is not breaking news chaos. This is a reflex. These people are so conditioned to shove every sensational story into their white male threat template that even when the suspect is obviously black, the brain just auto-completes. White guy did it. And then when they get busted, they pull the whoops, honest mistake card like that fixes anything. But zoom out a second. We've been watching this trend for years. Hispanics logged as white, Middle Eastern logged as white, sometimes even black suspects coded as white in certain systems or reports. Why? Because it makes the numbers look like white people are the sole factory for violence, extremism, and crime. And that feeds the narrative they're addicted to. Then you've got politicians quoting those stats like scripture to talk about white domestic terror and right-wing violence. And surprise, surprise, the underlying data is polluted. This isn't about protecting minorities. It's about weaponizing them as permanent victims while turning white Americans into the boogeyman of every headline. And here's the part that really sets me off. They act like questioning any of this is racist. You notice that? CNN can literally change a black man to a white man with a sentence. And we're the ones accused of erasing identity if we call it out. If a cop mislabels a suspect to hit a quota, that's systemic racism. If a news anchor mislabels a suspect to hit a narrative, suddenly it's just an editing issue. No, you don't get to magically reassign race when it fits your script and then cry about disinformation when people replay the tape. That's why folks don't trust institutions anymore. Not because of conspiracies, but because they keep lying in broad daylight and daring us to notice. This is why I say over and over, the enemy isn't just bad policy, it's weaponized perception, and they will burn the truth to the ground if it keeps their storyline intact.
All right, that's Brian fully warmed up. Somebody check the fire extinguisher. Rachel, let me kick this your way because you're usually the one who slows us down and says, okay, let's separate the outrage from the structural problem. From the data side, the documentation side, what does this say to you when the same kind of mistake keeps happening over multiple years and multiple systems?
What it says to me is that we are living in a country where the institutions that claim to measure reality are, in fact, building a version of reality that serves them. And I don't just mean cable news, I mean law enforcement reporting systems, state data structures, federal crime tables, and how that information gets summarized for public consumption. When you consistently categorize non-white suspects as white in databases, you aren't just mislabeling a field. You're distorting the entire downstream narrative about who is dangerous, who needs watching, and who needs saving. I've seen those spreadsheets. I've seen those race-ethnicity breakdowns where Hispanic isn't treated as a standalone category in the main columns. So you end up with white being the catch-all, and any nuance shoved into a footnote nobody reads. Then a journalist pulls the data, writes, whites commit X% of Y crimes, and the audience never knows that classification decisions upstream turned that number into fiction. When Tapper does what he did, it exposes that culture. It's not one error, it's a pattern. Fit the story first, ask questions never. And here's the more uncomfortable part. This also harms the very minority communities the left claims to defend. If crime happening within a specific community keeps getting reassigned on paper to another demographic, that's not protecting anyone. That's leaving the underlying issues unresolved while you blame some other group. You can't fix violence, poverty, or targeted recruitment into criminal networks if the official narrative says, nope, this is mostly a white problem. That means resources don't get allocated properly. It means badly designed policy. It means skewed academic research that relies on tainted data. So when I look at this, I don't just see ideological bias, I see a total betrayal of honest governance. Crime stats should be boring and brutally accurate. When they become political instruments, you know you're not dealing with a neutral system anymore. You're dealing with propaganda in spreadsheet form.
And that's the line right there. Propaganda in spreadsheet form. Daniel, I already know you've got red string on a corkboard somewhere connecting Tapper, the DOJ databases, and a think tank in DC that drinks oat milk and thinks Antifa is a myth. Lay it out. Where does this mislabeling pattern sit on your conspiracy board?
On my board, this sits under one big header: manufactured consent through demographic engineering. People hear that and think it's tinfoil. But look at the mechanics. If I want long-term political power, I don't just pass laws, I shape what people believe about reality. And one of the easiest, quietest ways to do that is to manipulate how crime, race, and threat are recorded and reported. You tell a population over and over that the biggest danger in their lives is white extremism. And then you adjust the inputs so that every major arrest, every shocking story, every scary event statistically bends toward white. That doesn't mean white people never commit crime. Obviously they do. But if you're constantly reassigning non-white suspects into that category, you inflate the numbers in a way that justifies a whole ecosystem of NGOs, anti-extremism programs, federal grants, DEI initiatives, media specials, and election speeches about the rise of white violence. Everyone on that pipeline makes money, gets clicks, secures funding, and gains moral high ground, as long as the numbers support the story. So when Tapper mislabels this guy, I don't see a blooper. I see a guy whose software is so patched into that narrative that the wrong words come out automatically. And once the clip is out there, the damage is done. A chunk of people hear white male. They don't follow up. They don't see the correction, if there even is one, and the mental file stays labeled, yep, another white terrorist. That's the psyop. It's not about one segment being false. It's about the long-term impression over years, and they will keep playing this game until their own sloppiness exposes it so blatantly that even people who never watch cable news start saying, "Hold on, that's not right." That's what this pipe bomb story is. It's not the beginning of the manipulation. It's the moment the glitch became visible.
All right, Skylar, here we go. You're the one on this panel who worries most about systemic racism, bias, institutional abuse. All that. So I'm genuinely curious. When you see a black man labeled white on national TV, or a Latino suspect counted as white on a crime table, what do you see? Is this just error and incompetence, or is there something in the criticism that you think we might actually be right about?
So first, let me say this. I don't think it's crazy to question how these classifications happen. This stuff should be transparent, and it obviously isn't. I'm not going to sit here and defend Tapper saying something that visibly doesn't match the person in the image. That's sloppy at best and irresponsible at worst. And I agree with Rachel that bad data creates bad policy. Where I'm going to push back is on intent and direction. Do I think there are entrenched systems that mishandle race data? Yes. Do I think some of that is rooted in laziness, outdated categories, and the fact that our official boxes for race have never kept up with reality? Also, yes, but I don't jump immediately to, this is all one big deliberate plot to inflate white crime. I think you've got a toxic stew of negligence, pressure to get stories out fast, and yes, narrative bias. But that bias can cut in multiple directions, depending on who's telling the story. I've also seen plenty of examples where black or brown suspects are plastered on screen as the face of crime in local news, way out of proportion to their share of incidents. So this isn't just a one-way street. That said, I will concede this. When the mistakes lean mostly one way in high-profile national coverage, when race gets reassigned in a way that reinforces white extremism as the primary existential threat, it deserves serious scrutiny. But I don't want that scrutiny to feed into a new kind of denial where people pretend white supremacist violence doesn't exist or isn't dangerous just because some data is bad. Both can be true. The threat is real, and the numbers are manipulated or misrepresented. We should be fighting for accurate crime data because communities of color need real solutions, not cosmetic ones, and because everyone deserves the truth about what's happening in their country. If this pipe bomb case forces people to demand cleaner, more honest reporting from both law enforcement and the media, then yes, I'm absolutely on board with that. Where I'll always argue with you guys is when the response becomes, see, it was all fake. It's not all fake, but it is more broken than the institutions want to admit.
And that right there is why we keep this panel together. Brian sees the narrative flamethrower, Rachel sees the corrupted ledger, Daniel sees the PSYOP playbook, and Skylar sees the messy human systemic side we can't just wave away. But at the end of the day, we're looking at the same core problem. A system that keeps asking us to trust it, while it lies about things we can literally see with our own eyes. When a black suspect becomes white in transit from reality to the screen, that's not just a glitch, that's a warning. And if they're willing to fudge something that basic, you've got to ask yourself, what else are they reshaping before it gets to you? Tonight's episode is brought to you by the patriotic caffeine pipeline itself. Data and Dissonance Coffee. High Lakes Light Roast. Citrus, milk chocolate, dried fruit. The perfect wake up and remember CNN lied again. Coffee. Rock Creek Medium Roast. Bold, smooth, balanced. Like Rachel trying to keep Brian from flipping the desk. Bitterroot Dark Roast. Heavy, rich, and strong enough to make Daniel stop drawing red string maps for 5 minutes. All roasted in the USA, whole bean or ground. Grab a bag, fuel the show, support the mission. What happened this weekend wasn't just a bad news call, it was a spotlight on a deeper rot. When institutions mislabel suspects, warp statistics, and massage reality until it fits a predetermined shape, they're not just failing, they're lying. And these lies shape policy, elections, public fear, and national identity. Crime data isn't some academic spreadsheet. It determines who gets blamed, who gets defended, who gets demonized, and whose story gets erased. When you relentlessly relabel minorities as white criminals, you're not just protecting a political narrative, you're poisoning the well of truth. So as we go into this week, remember, the media doesn't make mistakes like this anymore. They make choices. And it's on us, the loud, stubborn, curious, unbought crowd, to keep pointing at the truth no matter how many times they try to whitewash the facts. Because truth doesn't need permission. It just needs a microphone. And we've got one right here. And always remember, speak truth. Stir thought. Tonight's episode is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke thriller series, The Covenant Protocol, The Prophet Directive, Black Echo Rising, coming soon. High stakes, covert ops, political intrigue. The perfect pairing for a Monday episode where the system's fingerprints are all over the chaos.